Hey everybody, welcome back to Kimmell and Cox, your source for all things entertainment. I'm Keith Cox. I'm joined as always by my good friend Dylan Kimmell.
Well, hello everyone. Anyways, back to part 3.
Yes, so in the midst of Marty, trying to rescue Doc, because at the beginning of the movie, after they uncover the DeLorean in the cemetery, they discover a headstone with Doc's name on it, and showing that he was shot by Buford Tannen, and over a matter of just $80, and that this woman named Clara Clayton, I guess, had paid for Doc's headstone and everything, and they're like, who, Marty's like, who the hell is Clara, So they're trying to figure this out, where, who is this woman and why was she involved in Doc's life? And not long after that, they learn that Clara Clayton is a new school teacher coming into town to teach school, at Hill Valley, I guess, high school or whatever.
The funny thing is that Doc, he says, I don't have time. Like, this is before they meet Claire, and Doc is like, I don't have time for love or anything. Right. A guy like me, no.
Yeah, he's like more or less like, I'm a scientist. Like, the idea of me getting involved in such a relationship, in this time period, it's just ridiculous. And then the next thing you know, here comes the mayor announcing her arrival, and they happen onto her by accident. A snake. A
snake startles one of her horses while she's on a carriage.
Yeah, and she's she's out of control or whatever. Doc and Marty see her and go running after her, and Doc rescues her, and her buckboard goes off the cliff and crashes into a million pieces. And then, of course, he learns her name, and they realize, holy crap, like, we may have just seriously altered history here. She was supposed to go over that cliff and die because they were supposed to name the ravine.
The ravine after her,
They were looking at a map, and they're like, when they were later on, when they're plotting how they're going to get Marty back to 1985, and they're looking at a map, and he's like, oh, this is curious. It's like this. It's like, on this map, it's called Shonash Ravine. It was supposed to be Clayton Ravine. He's like, this must be the old Indian name for it. And then later on, it dawns on them that, that was supposed to be her. And so it sets off this whole thing of did they just completely ruin history by saving her life?
Like Doc Brown's all distraught. He's like, I have ruined the timeline. I have done it.
But he falls in love with her. And that's another thing that I liked about this movie compared to the others, is that it gives Doc even more to do, and we see a different side of him. He's really, if you think about it, his personality is a little bit different in this movie compared to the other two. I feel like he's more
human.
Yeah, he's more human. He's more confident, in the sense that he has a different, he has a different swagger about him. He has a different air about him.
He finds someone that connects with him on a personal level, that understands him on that level. Like, they both fall in love with each other, and they love Jules Verne.
They love science fiction, and just science in general, astrology, all those things. And so he really connects with her, and at first he decides that he wants to stay in 1885 to be with her, and Marty convinces him that, it's like, Doc, you're a scientist, it's like, more or less, you have to, you need to think with your head and not with your heart, what's the right thing to do up here. And eventually Doc agrees, and he's like, you're right, I can't take a chance on, I've already potentially seriously affected the space-time continuum. I can't afford to do that anymore. So he breaks things off, with Clara, and of course she's devastated.
He tells her the truth too.
Yeah, he does. She basically begs him. She's like, don't treat me like a child. Just tell me the truth. And he tells her, I came here from the year 1985. I invented a time machine, all this kind of stuff. And then she feels like he's just making excuses at that point because it sounds so ridiculous. She's like, you could have just told me that you didn't love me and didn't want to see me anymore. That would have been better than giving me this, this huge story. And he's like, but that's the truth.
But that's not true.
Yeah. But another big part of the story here is trying to figure out how they're going to get Marty back to 1985. Because when Marty was running from the Indians, one of them hits the DeLorean with an arrow and
hits
rips
the gas line.
The fuel line. And, of course, Marty's not thinking what time period he's in. He's like, we can just pour some gas in there, and we'll, or no, he forgets about the gas aspect because he thinks that, that the DeLorean, runs on, because Doc, in part 2, it had come up with that Mr. Fusion idea, which was supposed to replace the plutonium. Yeah. And then Doc explains to him that, well, Mr. Fusion powers the time circuits and the flux capacitor, but the internal combustion engine, has always run on gasoline, always will. And this is 1885. You can't get gasoline. And so they have to figure out how in the world are they going to, to get they have to be able to get the DeLorean up to 88 miles per hour. And so they try pulling it with horses. They hook up like 6 horses to it, and then, it only gets up to about,
maybe like
40 miles an hour or something like that. And then he's like, well, maybe we can roll it down a steep hill. And he's like, no, you'd never get a steep enough surface. It's like, I have it. We'll wait till winter. But when the lake freezes over, and then Marty's like, Doc, you're going to get shot on Monday. And he's like, okay, let's just think about this logically. He's like, if we know it won't. They even tried pouring some whiskey in the gas tank, and the gas tank or the whiskey was so strong that it actually blew the fuel injection manifold. And so he's like, all right, so we know the DeLorean won't run under its own power. We know we can't pull it, but what if we could push it up to 88 miles per hour?
Right, just as he says that,
train comes into the station in the background. So they get the idea. Okay, they have this elaborate plan where they're going to hijack.
Talk to the train.
The next train that comes in, and unhook all the cars from it. And there's a straight stretch of track. They have to use the switch track, and because when they talked to one of the engineers, they were asking like, what's the fastest you've ever gotten, a train up to, and he tells them, and then it's like, have you ever gotten, you think one could do like maybe 90? And he's like, 90? It's like, what in tarnation would you ever be in such a hurry for? But then he explains to them, he's like, well, if you had a straight, a straight stretch of track, with a level grade, and you could get the fire hot enough, then maybe you can reach speeds like that. So then Doc comes up with this idea. He invents these, basically his version of Presto logs. Yeah. And each one, there's like 3 of them, and each one burns at a different temperature, and it basically just it kicks up the boiler pressure, and will in theory cause the locomotive to run faster. Right. And so that's the plan. It's like they're going to push the he outfits the DeLorean with like rail car wheels. It's like we're gonna push it, and of course there's a point where the bridge isn't finished. Yeah, the bridge is not finished, and of course Marty's like, well, this is not going to work. He's like, I'm going to go plummet right off the edge of the track into the ravine, and of course Doc reminds him again. It's like Marty, you're not thinking fourth
dimensionally.
And he's like, so if you hit 88,
get that a lot.
Yeah, it's like if you hit 88 miles an hour before you hit the edge of the ravine, when you get to 1985, you'll go safely across the finished bridge.
Yeah.
So so that's the main part of the story. But obviously, as always in any Back to the Future movie, there are things that interfere with that, and they end up cutting it really close.
Like the big spot there, because obviously Marty has interfered with the part that Doc Brown might get shot, and it's actually shown that like he brought a little picture of the tombstone, and Doc Brown's name vanishes. It's now empty, but it's not like he's like, oh, the future's changing. He's like, but the tombstone is still there, meaning it may not be my name. Mm-hmm. And so Marty's hot-headedness might have earned him the spot.
Yep.
The whole chicken line.
Yep. The whole thing about people thinking of him as a coward really kind of gets him into trouble in these movies, and he has a run-in with Buford Tannen, so now Buford Tannen's kind of like he's kind of forgotten all about Doc.
And there's another moral thing there, where Seamus actually tells him, he's like, you can't let people get under your skin, and just go with it.
Because Seamus's brother got stabbed in a saloon for that exact reason, because people were always trying to provoke him into fights, and he didn't want to be thought of as a coward. And so Buford talks Marty into meeting him outside the saloon on the day that Doc and Marty are supposed to go back to the future. And it's classic showdown that you see in westerns so much.
Marty, of course, thinking that they're going to be gone by then, not going to ditch him and everything.
Yeah, he's like, he tells him, he's like, what? It's like, what are we going to meet at high noon? And and Buford's like, I do my killing before breakfast, 7 o'clock. And Marty's like, 8 o'clock. I do my killing after breakfast. And Doc is like, what are you doing, Marty? He's like, are you forgetting? And he's like, Doc, he's like, we're gonna be long gone by 8 o'clock. And he's like, yeah, in theory. He's like, what if the train is late? And so then Marty has this realization, like, well, wait a minute, we didn't talk about this. And but in true Back to the Future fashion, there's all these things that happen like right at the climax of the movie, and making you wonder, is Marty going to make it back? Because Doc.
Yeah, he even says in there, he says, why do we have to cut it so close?
Yeah, and like Doc.
After breaking up
with Clara, goes to the saloon, and after only taking one shot of whiskey, he passes out.
Yeah, just one shot. That man can't hold his liquor.
So they're trying to wake. They're trying to wake him up, and then Buford shows up early to the saloon. It's like before 8 o'clock, and calls him out, and Marty comes up with this brilliant idea, which he stole from a Clint Eastwood movie. And that's the thing too, I meant to mention
like
this
in
movie.
part two, they set up a whole bunch of things. Like one, Back to the Future, when they went to 2015, there was this part where they actually show that Marty McFly has a good shot because he plays that game.
Right, he plays the arcade game.
Game, and that comes into full circle, and that's how he ends up getting the gun in the
Biff is watching.
He's watching one of the old Clint Eastwood movies.
It's part of that trilogy of the Man with No Name movies. It might be The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I can't remember which one he's watching, but he's watching that in the hot tub, and so that is sort of foreshadowing because Marty takes the idea from that movie where he finds takes a door off of one of those old like potbelly stoves and puts it under his like what do you call it? It's like a serape, like a wrap.
Yeah, like a little poncho thing. Yeah.
And he meets Tannen in the streets, and they're supposed to have a shootout. But Marty takes his gun off, and tells Buford, he's like, I thought we could settle this like men. And he's like, you thought wrong, dude. And then he shoots him like right in the chest. Of course, Marty goes down. Biff
He does this little
or Mad Dog
straddles
goes
over
up
there. It's like a little
inspect his work, and then Marty kicks the gun out of his hand, jumps up, and Mad Dog goes to punch him, and hits the and then Marty lifts up his poncho there and reveals the stove door underneath, and it's basically like a makeshift bulletproof vest.
And then he smacks him in the head,
and then punches him a few times, knocks him into
the tombstone, and then the tombstone's gone, and then he lands into a big pile of shit.
Yep. That's where tannins are always meant to end up, apparently. It's in a big pile of shit. When he repeats that line, it's like, I hate manure. And
Officer Strickland,
Marshall Strickland.
Strickland comes up, and then the gang...
Get him out of that shit.
And then Buford's... gang is like, I think he's going to jail, and they run out.
Yeah. And then Clara overhears a conversation on, she's bought a one-way ticket to California. She's wanting to get as far away from Hill Valley as San Francisco is what it was, because Hill Valley's already in California. But she wants to get as far away from Hill Valley as possible after what happened with Doc, but then she overhears a conversation from another guy on the train who was in the saloon with Doc, and realizes how much he was, in love with her. So she goes running after him, finds the empty blacksmith shop and finds the little model of the DeLorean that says Time Machine on it, and then she realizes, oh, he really was telling the truth. And she goes to try to catch the train. Marty and Doc are already well on their way towards going back to 1985, and
that is a little bit of a funny scene.
It is
the train, they put those logs in there.
It starts going faster and faster.
She's getting knocked over all the way, and she just says,
really
golly.
Yeah, that's all she says. It was like, golly. It's like, nowadays it would be something completely different that would probably come out of her mouth. But yeah, so, big ending there. It's like there's so much going on. It's like, Clara jumps on board the train, and Doc, decides that he's going to take her, with them, and but she barely makes it out. I mean, she almost dies in the process. Nearly, falls off the train, and
Marty throws the hoverboard over to Doc.
Saves him.
Ends up getting on the hoverboard and saves both of them, and
then Marty
drift off and
successfully, reaches 88 miles an hour and goes back into the future, and the locomotive careens off into the ravine in a big explosion. And cool thing about that was
oh yeah, they didn't
look great.
It looked amazing, and I'd say that's probably just models, isn't it?
It was most of that was done with at least for the crash and stuff like that was done with miniatures, but it looks so good because when I was a kid, when I saw that, I thought that they really wrecked a real locomotive. I'm like, that's pretty awesome. I didn't find out until years later when I watched a documentary that was a miniature. It was still a big, when you think miniature, we're not talking like Hot Wheel size. I mean, it was probably, I don't know.
Like that big?
It was probably about, I don't know, maybe, it was probably about 3 or 4 feet.
Oh, 3 or 4 feet.
Yeah, I mean, it was big. I mean, it was really big, which makes sense because, that's probably, and when you film it, in slow motion and everything, and with the rigging up the explosives and all that, that scale, I think, really made it look more like a real train.
Yeah.
So
Marty's goes back into the future, and it's he's on a train tracks. You see that. Now, I didn't think of it this first. I think it was meant to be like a funny at first moment because the the rails or whatever that
the gates
end up closing,
come down, and
as he's rolling down. And at first, my brain's like, "Oh, that's funny." It registered that he was on the
right. No. Then another train starts coming right towards him, and he barely makes it out of the DeLorean in time before it just crashes right into the DeLorean, and it just explodes in like millions of pieces. And so sadly, Doc kind of gets his wish, because he has a line in the movie, about wanting to destroy the time machine. He says, "I wish I'd never invented that infernal machine. It's caused nothing but disaster." And so they do succeed in destroying the DeLorean. So no more time travel adventures for Doc or Marty, or so we think. Marty goes and picks up his girlfriend Jennifer, who's still asleep on her porch where they left her in part 2. Wakes her up, takes her for a ride in his new truck, that he got in the first movie.
And Needles pulls up again.
Needles shows up and challenges him to a drag race, which is supposed to be the drag race that Marty injures himself in, and basically kind of ruins his career, ruins his life or whatever. Because he let somebody talk him into racing, and he crashed into a Rolls Royce.
But his time in the Wild West and everything like that, learning from his mistakes of letting people get to him and everything, he's like,
yep,
he fakes it and starts driving backwards.
Yeah, he drives backwards, and Needles and his gang
nearly hit
Rolls Royce, and then Marty realized he's like, holy shit! It's like, if I would have raced him, I would have hit that Rolls Royce. And then, he takes, or Jennifer takes out the fax
that says you're fired on it, and it disappears. And it vanishes.
So Marty has changed his life for the better just by that one, wise decision. And I think that's really kind of the moral of the movies.
They go back to the train tracks, and he shows her that it wasn't a dream or anything like that. It really did happen. And then all of a sudden, something weird happens.
Yeah, the gates on the railroad track, at the railroad crossing, start coming down again, and Marty and Jennifer are they look one way down the track, they look the other way, and there's no train
coming. What?
And then all of a sudden, this big flash of light, knocks them on their butts, and we see a
very weird,
odd-looking train. That we discover is a new time machine that Doc built while he's been living. At this point, he's been living back in 1885, or in the Old West at least, for many years. And comes back at that point in time to visit Marty, and he's been a little busy. Doc's been a little busy. He and Clara have two kids, two little boys, Jules and Vern. and Marty and Doc took a little souvenir photo while they were in 1885, because they were just constructing a clock tower, and so they had a picture taken in front of the clock. But part of it got destroyed when the DeLorean got destroyed, and so Doc, I'm getting Marty and Doc, I'm combining them into one name. Doc presents Marty with a framed photo, the two of them, and
then Jennifer asks him about the little piece of paper.
She's like, "What does this mean? It's erased." And he's like, "Of course it's erased." He's like, "The future hasn't been written yet. No one has. It's your future is whatever you make of it. So make it a good one." And then with that, he closes up the train, which then. The wheels
powered by steam, by the way.
Yeah, it's powered by steam, and it the wheels fold down, and it raises off the tracks, and flies off into the sunset, so to speak. But this time it's not a joke. There's no more sequels.
The end.
The end. Not to be continued. Not to be concluded. So we know at that point that there were no plans for any further Back to the Future movies.
But however, there's been more adventures since then. Probably not canon in particular, but just fun little.
Actually, the most of them, I guess, are.
I guess you could consider
canon.
I guess you could. Yeah.
So in the time since
other forms of media.
Right. So after Part 3, actually not very long after Part 3, there have been, the Back to the Future legacy, did continue because we got Universal Studios Florida on May 2nd, 1991, opened Back to the Future, the ride.
Man, I wish I could have ridden that. It's no longer there anymore.
It was so awesome. It closed on March 30th of 2007. Man. So it was in there for a long time, but it was replaced by the Simpsons ride. That's what's there now.
I like the Simpsons and everything, but yeah. I feel like it was
such a loss, and it was and especially for its time, it was so cool. It was a virtual reality ride. Mm-hmm. So the whole premise of the ride, it was kind of a mission-based sort of thing. Doc was now working for this Institute of Future Technology. He had built, as an experiment, an 8-passenger DeLorean, so that more people could potentially time travel. And so you, as the rider, were supposed to be time travel volunteers. You had volunteered for his experiment to send this new DeLorean into a specified place and time, and all of this is explained on videos that are being played throughout while you're waiting in line.
Yeah.
And you can look this up. It's on YouTube. You can actually watch the entire Back to the Future the ride experience. It has all of the pre-show videos, and it shows the ride itself. And so basically, Biff comes along. Biff has time traveled from the year 1955.
Now, is Biff actually played by Tom Wilson?
Yes, Tom Wilson and Christopher Lloyd are both returned in these videos. Cool. And so he comes to the Institute, steals the real DeLorean, the original DeLorean, and so now the people who are there to ride the attraction have the mission. Doc gives them the mission that they have to go after Biff and chase him down, and they have to bump the other DeLorean, because apparently if there's this thing where apparently if two time travel vehicles bump each other, it sends them back into the time that they came from or something. There was some kind of little contrived thing. And so that's basically what you're doing is the ride is you're chasing after Biff, and you're going through all these different time periods. You go into even into the Ice Age and stuff like that. There's dinosaurs. You nearly fly into a T-Rex's mouth.
That would have been so much fun. Yeah. I hate that I missed out on that.
And they had the DeLorean, the 8-passenger DeLorean. They had it up on this hydraulic arm, and so it would raise off the ground, and it could tilt and go up and down and everything. And so that, combined with the gigantic sort of IMAX style 3D screen in front of you, really made it feel like you were flying. I mean, it was just really cool for its time, and it definitely was one of the best rides that they ever had at Universal Studios. So you had that kind of continuing on the legacy, and outside the ride, they actually had one of the original DeLorean time machines from the movie.
I did see that. I do remember seeing videos of that up there.
And they had the train. They had the time machine.
They did have the train too.
Yeah.
Oh my!
And I still have pictures of that somewhere. I got pictures taken with that, because obviously there was only one of those. One, and I guess a miniature for that shot at the end. Mm-hmm. So that was really cool. And for the opening of the ride, Michael J. Fox, Tom Wilson, and Mary Steenburgen were there for the grand opening.
Man,
and then
really cool to see.
Later, so the other Universal Studios theme parks followed suit. and opened their own Back to the Future ride. The one in Hollywood was open from June 12th, 1993 to September 3rd, 2007. So it closed roughly around the same time as the one in Florida. And then oddly enough, the one at Universal Studios Japan did not open until March 31st of 2001. Quite a ways after the...
Is that still...
That one closed down on May 31st of 2016.
Man,
so it hasn't been gone for too long. Yeah, but it was odd that they didn't even... I guess Japan was kind of like behind the game on stuff like that, and but the fact that it didn't even open until so long after
I was wanting to see it. Is it still there?
Yeah.
I might have to go.
But
better luck next time.
But again,
if you had a time traveling DeLorean, you might be able to see it. But
but if you can still, like say, you can catch videos of the ride and everything to see what it was like, and then also September 14th. 1991 saw the premiere of Back to the Future, the animated series.
The animated series. I remember watching at least the reruns because I didn't have cable or anything like that. I mean, it was on Saturday Night TV.
Yeah, Saturday morning cartoons. Yeah, and and it was pretty good. It
had Christopher Lloyd was introducing the episode in each.
Yep, he did the intros and the outros.
The one that really stuck, for some reason, it was like the funniest one to me when I was little, growing up, is the one where he gets a letter from his future self, and he reads the letter. He says, I've got a letter. What does it say? And he starts reading. He's like, look out for bag. Bag? What bag? And that bag just falls right onto his head.
Yeah, it was a good little show. I enjoyed those live action segments at the beginning and end of the show.
Beef.
Beef tannin.
Beef tannin. Oh, shit. Biff looked really weird in that one, honestly. He looked like a cartoon bully would look like. He didn't actually look like Tom Wilson, I didn't think.
But Tom Wilson and Mary Steenburgen both reprised their roles and then also voiced other characters like ancestors of their characters on the show. So you did have some original, returning cast members for the series.
It's kind of funny that Christopher Lloyd, although he did the intros, he didn't
do
play
his voice for Doc. Yeah,
I mean, he's got history of doing voice acting too.
So I'm not sure what the reasoning was behind that, but it was a pretty cool little show, and it only ran for 2 seasons. It's the last broadcast was on December 26, 1992. And there was also, I believe, it kind of tied in with, there was a comic series, I think, that
there was a comic book
based
series,
on that.
And there's they've also done a few more comic book series recently.
Mm-hmm.
But there
was also the game.
The video
Back to the
game.
Future, the game, yes.
The DeLorean. Now, this was actually Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis did have a hand in writing that material. The DeLorean mysteriously reappears.
Right.
And Marty tries to figure this all out and why this is here. And interesting enough, Tom Wilson did not reprise the role of Biff in that until 2015 when they did the anniversary version.
Yes, the original version of the game was divided into 5 separate episodes that were all released on different dates. The first one was released on December 22nd, 2010, and the last one was June 23rd of 2011.
I was looking for it, honestly. I just found the anniversary edition on Amazon for Xbox. I got an Xbox. Should I get it? I don't know. I mean, you can't actually get it digitally or anything like that because they've removed it from all digital servers and everything like that. Yeah. So it's a very hard game to find now.
It's
anything Back to the Future. It seems.
It's an okay game. It has more of a
it has a focus
cartoony look to it, as they're not going for like realism.
No, it has more of a it's more so focused on Christopher Lloyd's Emmett Brown. Like Marty you start learning more about his past and everything like that. And they did get a very good sound-alike for Marty McFly. Honestly,
yeah, he was great. He was like really spot on. They kind of recreated some of the classic scenes, you know, from the movie, especially from the first movie, and he just nailed it. But it's kind of one of those mission-based games where basically it's like you
point and click and
you make a choice. It's like you go into a room and it's like you got to choose, between like 3 options, and depending on which option you choose, the gameplay changes and the cut scenes change, depending on the choice that they make.
I want them to make a game where, similar to how the Ghostbusters video game really made you feel like a Ghostbuster, right? The original one. Well, I say original. There were a few before
the 2009.
Yeah. I say original, but it is original because when it has the original people, I think that's original. Yeah. I want to see a game where they actually implement time travel in a way. Actually have an impact on the time traveling thing. That way people can have their little fixation on, time traveling. I want to probably be very expensive a game, honestly, to time travel to this time period or that time period or this time period,
Right.
And then go back. You have your option to go back to the future or, so, and obviously you'd have choices that impact what happens here, what happens there. No, they could do it. They could implement some of the stuff that they have with certain games. They could do it with. There's this game called. Shoot, I'm forgetting the name of it now. But there's these certain games where they have pre-programmed stuff, but it's like randomized. So they could, use something with that and the choices that you implement in there. There's certain games that have that random factor in there. So you could use something like that to actually fixate, the time traveling aspect of it. I'm just brainstorming here. So
there's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot more they could do with that for sure. I think I think they could. Like I said, it was an okay game, but I think they could definitely come up with something even better. And Michael J. Fox actually, he wasn't voicing Marty, he was voicing a different character.
Just the little cameos and everything.
Yeah, in the 2015, when they did that re-release, October 13th, 2015, which was to commemorate the 30th anniversary of Back to the Future.
I'm going to have to get that.
Yeah, but he and Tom Wilson both did voices for the anniversary edition.
I mean, like you said, it's an okay game, but I just want to hear their voices.
Yeah.
Because if you go on YouTube and you watch the gameplay, it's the original actors. Like, no one's recorded anything with Tom Wilson's Biff or anything like that. I want to see the anniversary edition, and no one's actually recorded that.
And the latest incarnation, or whatever you want to call it, for Back to the Future is Back to the Future the musical.
The musical. Yes. Oh yes, I forgot entirely about that.
Yeah. So Back to the Future lives on the stage. It first premiered in Manchester, England, on February 20th of 2020, and ran there for a while, and I think there was another place over in that overseas there in 2021 where they had several shows, but it's supposed to be coming to Broadway in June of this year. So they're bringing it to America. It's like I said, it premiered in England, but I think some of the cast has changed for the American version. But anyway, Back to the Future and its legacy still lives on today, and just in different forms.
Might have to go see that. We might have to do a special episode where Kimmell and Cox go and visit that musical.
That would be cool. We never know. We might have to just make a trip to New York or something for that. But yeah. So these films, all three films, are such a huge part of just American cinema, and can't recommend them enough. So definitely, go and check them out. And I just recommend getting your hands on anything Back to the Future that you can watch. They're just such great movies.
Yeah.
I know you can stream all three of them on Peacock, Amazon Prime, several other places, and they're also available on DVD and Blu-ray. So plenty of places where you can catch those movies, and and I think for those who haven't seen them, I think you will fall in love with them just as quickly as we did.
Yes.
But that's just about all the time we've got for today. But
all the time. Well,
that as
time flies, but
yeah, literally, yeah. Especially when you're doing a podcast about time travel
with a flying DeLorean.
That's appropriate.
Yeah.
But as always, we want to remind everybody to be sure and subscribe, like, and share to our YouTube channel. And when you do subscribe, just be sure you hit that little bell icon so that you're receiving all the notifications whenever new videos or content are posted. Also, don't forget about our socials. We're on all the major social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. So be sure and check those out as well. We'll have links for you on the bottom of your screen, and that's a good way for you to get in on the conversation too. We want to hear from you. What do you think of the podcast so far? What do you think of of these episodes?
What could be improved upon it?
Exactly. We know you're watching. We know you're subscribing, because we're picking up new subscribers on practically a weekly basis now. So, but we want to hear from you. Just talk back to us. Engage.
Tell me what you want.
Yes. Marty. But yeah, it just that we really want to hear from you, and we want to have that interaction, and just to that's just going to be helpful for us and where we can go from here. And you can also check out our Patreon page, which gives you an opportunity to have more of a direct hand in helping with the podcast, contributing, and everything you contribute, goes towards the podcast, goes towards, production costs and better equipment, and hopefully like a permanent space and things like that, just to make the podcast the best that it can possibly be. So go on there and take a look at some of the perks that we're offering. Some pretty cool stuff on there, and just a way for you to to get involved and basically kind of be a producer almost is basically what your role would be. You would have a hand in producing the show. So there you go. But anyway, that's all the time we've got for today. But
what's the next episode? Our last episode. Our final episode.
The last episode of the season, and we are going to be closing out with what I think is a pretty good topic, going out on a high note. We're going to be talking about the series Tulsa King.
With Sylvester Stallone.
Yes, his first starring role in a fictional TV series.
Yeah.
So it's really great. It's from the producers of Yellowstone. So anyone who has watched that show or its spin-offs, it has that same sort of feel to it, and definitely the same sort of quality. But it's a terrific show, and so we're going to be talking about that next week, and we certainly hope you'll join us for that. But in the meantime, as always, be good to yourselves, and we'll catch you next week.
You dipstick.